JBL proudly presents Guitar Center Sessions.
Hi, I'm Nick Harcourt. This is Guitar Center Sessions. Please welcome our guest, Slash, featuring Miles Kennedy and the Conspirators.
Take a look, what are you seeing? Is that a noose or a wedding band? Or should I go see a healer? Love is twitching in my hands. Twitching in my hands. God help me rid this feeling, 'cause I'm falling all to pieces and I can't get out of bed. Beggars and hangers on try to take you from me. Someone with a Bible in his pocket clouding everything you see. Beggars and hangers on that try to step it away. Bury your soul in the women, 'cause the end is here to stay. And I can't get out of bed. I was wrong, I don't need you. It seems reckless and so damn unfair. It's better days are far behind me. I guess that's another cross that I'll have to bear. to take this book and lock it up inside. And maybe I'm knocked down, but I'm not beaten, no. And like anything, we were born to die. That's right. Beggars and hangers on try to take you from me. Sound on with a bomber when his pocket clouding everything you see. Beggars and hangers on to try to chip it away. Bury your soul in the river 'cause the end is here to stay. Oh, yeah. The seagulls inside my dog. How can I feel from my home?
I'm Nick Harcourt. We're here with Slash. You're probably one of the most recognized guitar players in the world. What was it about music that first got you?
That's a good question. I mean, when I was a kid, I was always around a lot of what you can consider contemporary music, rock and roll, when I was a little guy, and was always just a huge fan of music. And when I was 15 years old, or 14 years old actually, I picked up the guitar. And it was like all those years, that whole 14 years of listening to all these different types of music growing up, all of a sudden was like, it was like I stumbled on something that I was supposed to do.
Well, what was the stuff that you were listening to? What was the stuff you remember that made an impact on you?
My parents were rock people. There's like when I was really little, I remember the Stones, I remember the Yardbirds, and I remember the Kinks, and I remember the Beatles, and all the stuff that my dad and his brothers were listening to in England, right? And then when I moved to Los Angeles, it was a whole bunch of other stuff. It was like, the Doors were happening at that time, and Hendrix was going on, and so Cream, like all these really great bands. And as time went, there was Zeppelin, there was Black Sabbath, there was like all kinds of folk music. Of course, Dylan was a huge thing during my childhood. But my mom was pretty eclectic, so she turned me on to Phoebe Snow and Chaka Khan and David Bowie and but there was just tons of music in my house. My dad listened to a lot of classical music on top of all the rock stuff. And so I just ingested all this without really giving it much thought, but I definitely knew what I liked, and I definitely knew what I didn't like. And when I picked up the guitar, it was like a eureka moment. It was like all this stuff that I didn't know that I wanted to do, all of a sudden there was this tool to be able to express myself with it.
So
really
you had this diverse lineup of music that was infiltrating your brain, and it's interesting to me as well to think that you got the British side of it as well as the American side of it because of your dad coming from England. When you picked up that first guitar, how did that come about? Did you ask for one? Did you go buy one?
More or less. Steve Adler, who was my bandmate in Guns N' Roses from the beginning, he and I met when we were 13, 14, and he had an electric guitar and a little amp and a little piece of stereo that he used to crank Kiss records and bang on this guitar.
Right.
And he was just over the top about it. It was like you know, the happiest I'd ever seen him was when he was just, you know, but I mean, he didn't know how to play it. He'd just bang on it. And so we had that sort of, you know, that sort of fantasy of starting a band, you know. And I thought, well, I'll play bass. It just seemed like the logical thing to do. But I went to a local music store right on Fairfax in Santa Monica, a music school rather, and went in there without an instrument. And in the course of the conversation with the guitar teacher, he had a guitar and he started playing, I think it was Sunshine of Your Love. And I was like, that's what I want to do, because he was playing the lead part. And he goes, well, that's not bass, that's electric guitar, you know. And I really was sort of ignorant. I mean, I knew what it was, but I didn't really know what it meant. And so I went home and I was like, I asked my grandmother, I was staying with her at the time, I said, do we have a guitar anywhere? And it turns out that we had one hidden away in the closet that I never knew was there. So she gave me that guitar, and it was a flamenco Spanish, you know, guitar, but it only had one string on it. So I learned all kinds of riffs on that one string.
Wow.
And then finally, through that same guitar teacher, I learned how to put the other 5 strings on it. And he gave me some great sort of rock, you know, sort of rock lessons, you know, like if there'd be something that I wanted to learn and he would learn it off the record and teach it to me. And I was like, well, after a while, I was like, well, I can do that. And so I just took off from there.
Woke up this morning all alone. I got a ringing in my head. I couldn't take it anymore today. She left me here for dead. Oh, it'll come as no surprise. I should have known it from the start. The lights are faded and I can't deny this place ain't got no heart. Oh, if you can't hear me tonight, if you can't hear me tonight, you'll have to carry me back from Cali. I'm tired and broken and I lost my way. You'll have to carry me back to where I belong. You'll have to carry me back from Cali. I don't want money, I don't need the fame. You'll have to carry me back to where I belong. I got to leave this angel city, but I can't do it by myself. So if you please, mama, can you say amen before I blow this life to hell? Mama, grab me by the feet and just drag me on. You'll have to carry me back from Cali. I don't think everything I'm to blame. You'll have to carry me back to where I belong. You'll have to carry me back from Cali, the angel city where the devils play. You'll have to carry me back to where I belong. Oh, if you can hear me tonight, 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 I've lost my way, I'm so alone, and all I want is to come home.
mentioned some bands like Zeppelin and Cream and the Yardbirds, and iconic guitar players, obviously, in those bands with their own sound, tone. Is that something that you spent time developing?
Like with everything else, I didn't necessarily know about. I didn't have any friends that were guitar players, and obviously all my heroes were completely unreachable. So I sort of put my own idea of how it all worked, together in my head, and I just experimented with stuff. And I remember discovering a sound that I dug, and it was a little Fender Princeton and that Les Paul copy and a little MXR distortion box. And I remember that feeling of getting that working and going, oh, and that was like, definitely, I had in my mind an idea of where I wanted it to go. I just never gave it that much thought. But when I sort of stumbled on it, I was like,
arrived.
There I am, yeah. And I think I've been sort of trying to improve on that ever since. I haven't really wanted to change it so much, and I've been playing the same kind of guitar. I think I always aspired to get a Marshall, because that to me, and always has been, a certain kind of sound that you can't get out of any other amp. And I've just been working with those same tools, just trying to get better at it ever since ever since I started.
Talked about hearing it in your head. How cerebral is your playing?
It's part of it's totally organic, that doesn't have any real thought at all. And then there's another part of it that's just constant notes and ideas and melodies or whatnot that are swimming around all the time. So I always have to keep a guitar close by, because they come and go quickly,
Who would you say has influenced you the most?
There's a lot of guys that are all responsible for this. It was definitely, Eric Clapton back in the Creep days, Zeppelin, Aerosmith, AC/DC, B.B. King, Albert King. Those are like two of my favorite lead blues guitarists.
I was going to say, you're talking about a lot of blues guitarists.
They're all basically blues guys. Chuck Berry was one of them, Keith Richards and Mick Taylor and Ron Wood, that whole Stones thing. Even Brian Jones, for that matter. So I mean, just everybody that was any good. Jeff Beck's a big one, that I grew up listening to, are still pretty much the best sort of rock and roll lead guitar players. I mean, there's more. I could go on for days with this, but they all had a lot to do with turning me on to this, and
It's been a long year since you've been gone. I've been alone here, I've grown old. I fall to pieces, I'm falling. I fell to pieces and I'm still falling. Every time I'm falling down, all alone I fall to pieces. I keep a journal of memories. I'm feeling lonely, I can't breathe. I fell to pieces, I'm falling. I fell to pieces and I'm still falling. Every time I'm falling down, all alone I fall to with more to go. Will the memories die? I'm waiting. And will I find you? And will I find you? I'm falling down. I'm falling down. Every time I'm falling down, all alone I fall to pieces. Every time I'm falling down, all alone I fall to pieces.
Of course, a significant part of your story is Guns N' Roses. And I'm sure you've talked about it many, many times. But can you take us back to what was going on in Los Angeles when Guns N' Roses formed?
When Guns formed, it was like the height of that whole West Hollywood, Sunset Strip, hair metal craze that was going on. It was pretty, it was pretty electric. There was definitely a prominent scene happening in West Hollywood at that time. Well, people coming from all over the place, and all the clubs were active, and it was a good buzz going. I didn't necessarily always agree with everything that was going on in music in LA at the time, but at least there was something tangible. There was a thing in the air where people were really going for something,
It was an exciting time, I think, from I wasn't here, but from what I'm told.
Looking back on it, because at this, as we speak, there's not really any kind of a real scene going on in LA, so it's sort of flat. At that time, there was a lot of activity, And prior to that, even in the 70s, when I was a kid growing up, LA was just ablaze with stuff that was happening. So it's sort of weird that it's so quiet right now.
Do you think that has something to do with the shift in the music industry in general? The fact that people don't buy records anymore, people are not as invested in music anymore?
Well, obviously the chances of you getting a choice record deal by playing at the Whiskey are a lot slimmer than they were when I was first starting out. So yeah, I would imagine that does have something to do with it.
Well, you guys got a record deal pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think in the first 3 years that we were together, I think somewhere in there.
And obviously Appetite for Destruction came out. It had been out a while though before it hit.
Took a minute, yeah.
Yeah. What were you guys thinking while that was going on? I mean, obviously you're out playing, but you're like, is this going to happen? And then when it did hit, how did that shift for you?
Well, I don't remember actually having an actual conversation with any of the guys about where we were headed. Like when the album came out, just getting to that point of finding a producer and getting a record deal, then finding a producer, which took a while, and then going to the studio and producing an album, that was a huge hurdle in itself. But then when we got out and touring, and at least from my vantage point, we were just jamming every night and sort of, like experiencing that whole thing sort of for the first time. And I wasn't aware of too much what the record was doing. I wasn't really paying much attention to it. And then, a good year and a half into it, and the people behind the scenes were working really hard to make it happen, but to me, it was just about getting to the next gig. That was what was exciting to me. And then when it finally did hit, I didn't really realize it until it was the size of the audience. Like as an opening band, people were showing up early to see us, and there was something I was becoming aware of having a bigger and bigger following, till we played a couple dates in front of 50 to 100,000 people, and the reaction.
That's got to blow your mind.
That was I'll never forget that, for sure.
There's 100,000 people there to see you.
Well, they weren't there necessarily just to see us.
Well, they're seeing you in that moment, though. It's a little different from the whiskey.
But it was huge. And that's when I realized, it wasn't even so much about how many, whatever the statistics were that the record company was telling us about. It was that audience feedback that made you realize that you sort of, that you arrived. It was awesome. I was just getting off on playing all the time, partying all the time, and that went on for the better part of from the mid-90s all the way up until about 2001. So talk about John Lennon's lost weekend. I had like a lost decade. It was pretty crazy.
Look, I mean, you're in a rock band, you're in one of the biggest rock bands in the world, you have access to stuff that a lot of people wouldn't have access to. You say you have a lost decade. I mean, so you probably can't remember a lot about it, but I mean, when you look back...
I did write a book. I had to sit down and really focus.
When you look back at that then, I mean, what was that period like for you as a guy, let alone as a musician, as a guy living this kind of insane lifestyle?
When I was picking up the guitar, I was pretty much sort of living a very bohemian, not really sort of a member of regular society anyway. So the whole sort of, when the band got really big and stuff, it just made that sort of reality on a much bigger scale. I don't think I really changed that much. It was always about getting a guitar, getting to the gig, and I never really understood the dynamic of the sensationalism that went around with being in a huge rock band. It made me actually really introverted. But the partying lifestyle was that was a big part of Guns N' Roses from the very beginning. So.
But was that a part of the attraction of being in a band?
No, I mean, I think the thing about being in a band was always the same thing that got me going when I first started. It was about being in a rock and roll band. It was about playing. It was about the whole sort of interaction of the group of people and the energy that you derive from that and all that. The partying was just something to do to kill the time in between gigs. So
how did you eventually battle those demons?
Well, because in any with most people who party to excess, after a while it goes very, very quietly from being a lot of fun to becoming, the crutch that you turn to every time things aren't going well, and that becomes a little bit more of a miserable side of the whole thing, and just years and years of ups and downs with that, and, having major addiction problems and all that stuff that I'm sure you're familiar with. It finally just reached a point where it just wasn't fun anymore. And so fortunately for me, the one thing that always kept me grounded and kept me sort of walking and breathing was music. And so there came a point where it was like one or the other. And so finally...
Were you about to compromise that, do you think?
Well, I think, without, maybe not consciously, but I think you're compromising it when, you can't do until you find your dealer, you know, and so however long that takes, and then you've got to fix, and it just becomes a priority that it's a burden that you have to deal with. It's a long conversation, but anyway, so and the same with alcohol. It just becomes this thing that becomes as important as breathing and eating or whatever it is that your normal functions are. You know, you add this new baggage to it and it becomes a major part of your whole existence. And yeah, music has to take a back seat at some point.
Was there a moment where, I mean, do you remember a specific moment? A lot of addicts will talk about a moment where they hit bottom. Do you remember a moment where you're like, I gotta stop this? Something happened where you're like, I gotta stop?
Well, denial, it's hard. Denial can carry you a long way. There was hints of it. You know, it took a lot of going through these different experiences of hitting bottom, sort of picking yourself back up, and just those continual, you know, peaks and valleys of feeling comfortable with yourself and everything that you're doing, and sort of keeping your habits sort of in check, and then going down the ravine again, and then climbing back up, and finally it starts to make sense. It's like, this is really a lot more of a pain in the ass than it's worth. And then it's a matter of committing to the idea of just stopping, you know.
Was it easy for you once you decided?
Once I finally made that decision, I haven't touched it since.
Across the long last great divide, a distant longing never dies. Know the pain of a dream that was never known, never fades, no. That's alright, someday I'll find you. I tell myself most every night. It seems so far and away. Another life, another time and place. Oh, I hope that I can find you so far and away. I've nothing lost, I never will replace. It seems so far away. A love I'll never come to see. And though I tried, can't let it be. My God, it aches for the longing, it only grows every day. I only bleed when I'm all alone. It's saying time, give it tomorrow. But to me, that's just a lie. It seems so far and away. Another life, another time and place. Oh, I hope these words will find you so far and away. I'm waiting on a miracle today. It seems so far away. So if you hear this last refrain,
I want to come back to your current career, your solo career. You're independent now. You're an independent artist now. You've gone through the... well, there's something ironic about that, don't you think? You've gone through the major label system and everything's changed, obviously, over there. How does it feel to, I guess, be in total control?
Well, I mean, like when I did my last solo, I mean, it was really my first real solo record because it didn't involve, you know, I'm always been somebody to get a bunch of guys together and just have a band. You know, it's just the way I was raised into this, or the way I got into it. And so this was the first time where I had just myself, you know, to sort of like, okay, I want to make this record and I've got to get these people together, and then I had the idea of having all the singers, so I had to get a bass player and a drummer and then get all these singers together because I wanted to have people play on my record as opposed to me playing on everybody else's. That was the basic gist of it. And so that was really a liberating experience, just having, just doing whatever it was that I wanted to do without anybody looking over my shoulder, without having to answer to anybody. But by the time it was done, it was a hugely satisfying feeling. And then, you know, I've never been able to, the concept of making a record without doing a tour it's inconceivable. So as soon as the record was done, I started putting ideas together to get a band to go on the road with. And in the process of doing that, Myles Kennedy, who was one of the guys who sang on the record, he and I developed a great relationship. And then I met Brent Fitz in Las Vegas one night, and he introduced me to Todd Kearns, and so this was going to be the touring band, and it turned into a really great band. So once again, here I am in a band again. You know?
If there was a song that would encapsulate what Slash is all about, what would it be?
That's the toughest question in the world. Street Fighting Man from the Stones. It's a great one. I mean, I could sit here for days and.
Well, you picked a great one. Why?
Because that's a song that sort of encompasses what it's all about to me, you know.
In the distance, light years from tomorrow, far beyond yesterday, she is watching, heart-aching sorrow. She is broken as she waits, hoping when said and done, we then to love and be as one. Oh, starlight, don't you cry, we're gonna make it right before tomorrow. Oh, starlight, don't you cry, we're gonna find a place where we belong. Where we belong. And so you know you'll never shine alone. There are shadows steep in the horizon that leave us scared and so afraid of the fallout of a world divided. It brings her tears, oh, and so much pain. So we take cover from the dark, hoping to find where we can start. Oh, starlight, don't you cry, we're gonna make it right before tomorrow. Oh, starlight, don't you cry, we're gonna find a place where we belong, yeah. Where we belong. And so you know you'll never shine alone. And starlight will find the place where we belong. Where we belong. And you will see as the mountains fall into dust that there's one thing that won't change. I believe and there is something within each of us that always says that will always remain as long as love is never found. Oh, starlight, don't you cry, we're gonna make it right before tomorrow. Oh, starlight, don't you cry, we're gonna find a place where we belong. Where we belong. And so you know you'll never shine alone. It's starlight will find the place where we belong. Where we belong. She is watching heartache and sorrow. She is broken as she waits.
How did you guys get together?
It's a long story. when I was doing my last record with all these different singers on it, at one point, towards the end of the record, I had a couple songs that I was looking for somebody to sing them, and I couldn't think of who to sing them. And it seemed like everybody knew who Myles Kennedy was, and I heard of him, but I'd never met him. And so I thought maybe he'd be the right guy to sing these two songs. And so I contacted him and told him what I was doing. He was like, cool, and send me the music. And I sent it to him, and he put the lyrics and words to this song called Starlight, and sent it back to me. And I was like, that's awesome, you know? And so we flew out to LA and we recorded that song, and then we did another one called Back from Cali. And that's how we really got together, and it sort of blossomed from there.
What's your background?
Well, I kicked around in Spokane for many years, and kind of cut my teeth playing in various bands. My first like real shot, so to speak, was back in the late '90s with a band called the Mayfield Four, and we did 2 records for Epic, and then a few years later I started playing with Alter Bridge, and we've been together for 8 years now.
And you're still in that band, obviously,
Yeah.
and you bounce back and forth.
Yeah.
You're a busy guy.
Yeah.
Guy hasn't quit working in 4 years.
It's been, well, pretty much since He Call, it's been non-stop, work. But good. I mean, it's music, man. I mean, like, I'm not digging ditches for a living. I'm lucky. So
This is true. We're all lucky.
yeah, absolutely.
How far into the tour were you before you decided that maybe this was going to be a band?
Well, when Myles and I had agreed that we were going to do this tour, I found Brent Fitz, and he introduced me to Todd Kearns. So Brent plays drums and Todd plays bass, and so from the first, we only had about 2 weeks of rehearsal before the first show, and in that 2 weeks we started jamming, and it was just that feeling of cohesiveness, and it was just like very, the chemistry was really good. So we set off on tour, and it was pretty early on. It was going so well, and I was getting along with the guys. There's so many variables in a band, and everything just sort of came together. And pretty early on, I was like, if I was going to do another record, I would do it with these guys. So I asked them if they were interested in doing that, and they were. So I just started writing material and sending it to Myles, and off we went. So we've just actually finished our first record as the same group that we toured. Yeah.
Sunrise creeping in, broken bottles gill within. The room is black, the blinds are drawn. I don't remember anything, what I've done or where I've been. Another night has come and gone. This is not for me. This is not for me. No, this life is not for me. No, this is not for me. No, anymore. The devil smiles and laughs at me, says you'll be back, just wait and see. You know I've heard this all before, and I say you can keep your high life in the hills, your cocaine lies and whiskey thrills. I don't need you anymore. This is not for me. Oh, this is not for me. No, this love is not for me. No, this is not for me. No. The only thing that makes me whole again is to stand right here before you with the storm. I'll keep running till the very end, for the life you choose is not the life I want. Dirty sunrise creeping in, broken bottles gill within, in a place I don't belong. This is not for me. Oh, this is not for me. Oh, this life is not for me. This is not for me. Oh, anymore. You can keep your love. I don't want any more. I'm gonna leave it on behind, yeah. I'm gonna leave it on behind, yeah. I don't want no more, yeah. Oh, no more, yeah. Oh, yeah.
What do you each bring to the table as songwriters that perhaps the other one doesn't?
That's a good question.
That's an easy one.
Yeah? Well, go
It's
for it.
easy. You answer.
I just come up with riffs and he goes, "Oh, I can sing that." It's a great relationship because it's like, it's nice to be, consider. I don't really write what you call songs. I mean, because I don't sit down and sing them and write lyrics and all that kind of stuff if I can help it. So I just come up with good sort of musical compositions, and I keep them very loose. Like I put a few parts together that sound really like they work, and then if he's inspired, then he just comes up with these things. And once he starts singing it, then we start coming in with the other ideas to make it more of a fleshing out a real song arrangement.
It's cool. It's like getting like this when he sends things. A lot of it was written via the internet because he'd do something on I don't know which platform you were using to record on, but then he'd send it to me and I put it in Logic and do my thing and then send it back. And it was cool because he's so great at coming up with really compelling riffs and musical things that lend themselves to melodies. And so for me, it's just a really great canvas to kind of throw those ideas on. And
it's pretty much the way that Starlight worked.
Yeah.
We've been writing that same way. Especially because that's why I said we were on the road. So all this stuff was written, on the fly. You know what I mean?
Right.
Were you working this stuff out on the road at all? Were you playing any of the stuff as you were writing it?
Couple things. We did at Soundcheck, and the first single that we we did a sound check, and the title track for the record, Apocalyptic Love, we worked out in rehearsal and stuff, or in sound check, you know. So we did do stuff there, but at hotels and on the bus and stuff, we're so fried from the gigs that we just like, you know, decompress. And then when I get to my room, I sort of put something together quietly and then just send it. And that was sort of the touring strategy, a way of doing it, the MO on the road, so to speak.
I'm guessing you've gotten over the fear of the MP3 coming back.
Oh yeah, no. Now it's intriguing. It's like I'm dying to hear what he comes up with for this. You know,
it's a fascinating way of working, and I guess, you know, technology has enabled us to be able to do this. But is it a new way of working for you to be sending stuff to somebody and getting it back with lyrics and vocals on it?
Well, I mean, you know, like if we didn't do it that way, it would be a much slower process because we would have to wait till we could get together in a room and sit down and work it out for a while, which would mean a day off, which are few and far between. So yeah, the sort of the way of doing this at this point, normally when I was on tour, I would just be in a bar. So this is completely new because I never used to write on the road. I was always partying too hard. So this time around, I actually took the time I invested into partying and just put it into writing. And so it's a whole different trip for me altogether, technology or no technology, just actually being productive in between gigs, you know?
Well, it's been a pleasure talking with you guys. Thanks for filling us in on the project.